to England to study in 1912, and essentially spent his philosophical career in England, although for a space of some 20 years he went back to Austria and stayed there. I want to turn to Wittgenstein at this stage, however, in going back to what we were saying about Bertrand Russell. Russell, in continuity with the 19th century empiricists, particularly John Stuart Mill, those empiricists and their attention to objective, empirical, scientific knowledge, as expressed in the hypothetico-deductive method, that is to say, scientific explanations, have the structure of a deductive system based on, for their premises, broad general hypotheses, okay? And so the hypothetico-deductive method, which in Russell comes through in his logical atomism, his attempt to analyze what we purportedly know into its logical constituents and to organize those logical constituents into a deductive system, adducing whatever would be the necessary premises as the hypotheses for that. So the hypothetico-deductive method, and of course the universal extension of this scientific method. And we saw the way that was the case in Russell, since he wants this method to be the method of all philosophy, of all human knowledge, of all science. Now, in other words, this movement of 19th century philosophy into the Russell of the early 20th century represents the kind of scientism, as it's called, which counts scientific method as the only acceptable method for giving us reliable knowledge. That sort of scientism. And it is this which then comes through in Wittgenstein, and I have to add the early Wittgenstein, the Wittgenstein of the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. The later Wittgenstein, represented by his book Philosophical Investigations, is different, and we'll be looking at him next week. But the early Wittgenstein follows Russell in this regard, as does the logical positivism of the 1930s and 1940s. The sort of position represented by A.J. Ayer, though he moderates the appeal to science and hypothetico-deductive method in some ways. Okay, so keep that framework in mind. And let me give to you an outline that I want to make some comments on, of some stuff in his Tractatus. One of the interesting things, and I'll refer you to it in a few moments, is that Russell wrote the introduction to the Tractatus. And whether or not this was Wittgenstein's intention, Russell's introduction seems to say that what Wittgenstein is doing is what Russell himself had held out for in his logical atoms. What actually Russell says in the preface is that the book starts with the relationship between words and things, showing how traditional philosophy arises out of ignorance and the misuse of language. Now that's a theme that runs through the positivists, runs through Wittgenstein, both early and late, you see, and one which Russell certainly agrees with. Remember the title of that work of his, Mysticism and Logic, in which he was criticizing the idealists. Russell goes on to say that what we need, because of the misuse of language, what we need, says Russell, is an ideal language. Not an actual language, not any ordinary language, but an ideal language, one in which every name, every noun, refers to just one fact, so that no word ever can be used to refer to two different things. Eliminate ambiguity, eliminate double reference, eliminate connotations that would be misleading. Okay? A strictly logical language, in which the atomic facts are described simply by atomic propositions. You remember Russell's line in that regard. Now, Russell says that this is what Wittgenstein is doing. Well, let's see. In his own preface to the book, this is what Wittgenstein says. The book deals with the problems of philosophy. You might have difficulty identifying what they are as you read it, but he says it deals with the problems of philosophy, and shows that the reason why these problems are posed is that the logic of our language is misunderstood. The logic of our language. Now, what's he mean by logic in the sense of the logic of language? Obviously, he's not referring to deductive syllogisms. That's not the logic of language. He's not referring to inductive reasoning. That's not the logic of language. He's referring to the logical structure of language, the logical form that it has, subject-predicate form, particularly, such that subject-predicate form of propositions asserts facts. Okay, asserts facts. Words, which are signs, names, don't assert anything. So that if I were to come into the room and simply say, brown, house, a few other isolated words, you'd think I was wacky, because I'm just not asserting anything. I'm not stating facts. All I'm doing, but certainly not in this. So he says the reason why the problems of philosophy are misunderstood, opposed at all, is that the logic of language, the logical use of language, is misunderstood. And so the whole sense of this book can be summed up in the following words, and he comes back to them on the last page of the book. What can be said at all can be said clearly. What we cannot talk about clearly, we must pass over in silence. In other words, put up or shut up. Well, the aim of the book, then, is to stake out the limitations of what language can say and show us how it says it. It's a book about the logic of language. Okay? Now, with that in mind, I think you can make some sense of this outline that I've given you. The numbers in the left column come from the numbering of paragraphs in the text. So that his first statement is 1. The next is 1.1. The typist put 1-1 rather than 1.1. Misunderstanding. Not surprising, since it's an unusual format. Okay. Now, sometimes you get a whole paragraph by such a number, sometimes just a sentence. It seems to be a reflection of the way the man not only wrote, but taught. It's said that he would thin out the people who were registering for his courses, so he'd have half a dozen people that he wanted. And they would meet in his rooms there at Cambridge, where the professors had their own living accommodations. Meet there in his rooms. And he habitually would sit astride a hard-backed chair, with his arms on the front of the chair, deep in thought, and would utter some sentence, and expect people in the seminar to further the discussion. Often with long pauses, waiting for people like David to speak up. You see. All sorts of tales are told about this mysterious character and the way he handled it. But notice what he's saying. All that is the case. The world is the totality of facts, not of things. Now, there's a distinction that's new. Between facts and things. What does he mean? A fact is the existence of a state of affairs. Okay? So a fact is likely to be complex. There could be molecular facts. There could be atomic facts. There's Russell. Okay? There can be molecular facts, there can be atomic facts. A fact is the existence of states of affairs. States of affairs are combinations of objects or things. So things are simply constituents of states of affairs. Now notice what's happening. His point is that words name things. Okay? Words name things. That words are constituents, or take it back, things are constituents of states of affairs. It's facts that are states of affairs. Now, the thing pertinent to the confusion of language is that one word can be used to name many different things. One of his examples is green is green. And he points out that the first green is a man, call him William Green. The second green is a property. He's envious. Okay? Now, alternatively, he might have said, I suppose, that green is the name B Green is the name of the quadrangle on the university campus. Or of the green meadows along the river Cam at Cambridge. The green. And maybe in spring somebody's saying green is green. Name of the place. And the sense quality. But this is simply his illustration of the fact that words can name different things. The same word for different things. Ambiguity, confusion arises. Philosophical problems arise from confused use of languages. In that way. Now, he goes on, however, we picture facts to ourselves. Yeah. We picture green as green with envy. Or we picture the green at Cambridge as green. I remember walking along it. It's green, very green, lush, right beside a river. Right after the end of World War II, I was stationed at a base just outside Cambridge. We used to go in there in our days off and wander through the university. All right. We picture facts to ourselves. We do it in our minds. We picture facts. A picture, that is to say a mental state, the picture, that mental state, is a model of reality. It's a mental model. Okay? But in the picture, there are elements of the picture that represent objects, things. So then, what we have is things or objects represented by the elements in the picture by which we represent to ourselves the facts. Okay? The mental picture of a fact, which is a state of affairs, the mental picture is made up of elements in the mental picture, which are referred to by words corresponding to the things which are the constituents of the states of affairs. So you have to get these correlations. You see Russell's atomic facts atomic statements, atomic propositions corresponding to atomic states of affairs, and the one-to-one correspondence between the elements of one and the elements of the other, all the way through. But in addition to the picture being a mental model, 2141, the picture itself is a state of affairs, a fact. Yes, it's a present state of affairs, and I have that picture in my mind. The picture itself is a fact. And there must then be something identical in the picture and what it depicts. In the picture and what it depicts, yes, there must be some correspondence between the two. Okay? The mental picture may be made up of words, but the state of affairs to which it refers is not made up of words. What sort, then, of identity is there between the mental picture and the objective state of affairs? You see? It's not that they're both made up of words. Oh, it's the logical form. We need a logical form to language which can be identical to the logical form of the objective states of affairs. Okay? So then, number 3, a logical picture of facts, you see, is a thought, like a proposition. A proposition expresses a thought that can be perceived by the senses. Yes, because a proposition can be heard, can be read, be it a simple or a complex proposition referring to atomic or molecular facts, as the case may be. So, 2 things about that first segment. You see how he is making use of Russell's logical analysis, logical atomism. That's the first. The second, this is known as Wittgenstein's picture theory of meaning. His picture theory of meaning. Okay? Mental representations, thoughts, are pictures corresponding to states of affairs. Now, if we reflect for a moment on the nature of meaning, okay? Meaning can be simply denotational, what in logic we call the extension, the logical extension of a noun. What is it that it denotes? What are the particulars, one or many, to which it refers, to which it extends? So what he is doing is emphasizing almost completely the denotational meaning, the extensional meaning of language. And inasmuch as the states of affairs seem to be empirical objects, this becomes an empiricist theory of meaning. An empiricist theory of meaning. The antecedent of which is, of course, in John Stuart Mill. What does the word matter refer to empirically? Permanent possibility of sensations. What does the word mind refer to empirically? Permanent possibility of reflections. Empiricist theory of meaning. The theory that was stated by David Hume about all matters of fact statements. Interesting, same word, fact. Fact. What is a fact? A matter of fact, a state of affairs. Well, if you cannot then, according to Hume, translate this philosophical language into the language of empirical facts, matter of fact statements, it's meaningless. You remember at the end of his inquiry, come in it to the flames. Let's have that big book burning of meaningless metaphysical twaddle. So what you get in Wittgenstein then is the empiricist theory of meaning, same as in Hume, same as in Mill, translated into Russell's language of logical atomism and reasserted in the early Wittgenstein. And it's precisely this empiricist theory of meaning which in the logical positivism of Ayer comes out as the verifiability principle. I wrote down there, the verifiability principle of meaning. You'll be reading Ayer now, some of you may have started. The first chapter of Ayer's Language, Truth and Logic is entitled The Elimination of Metaphysics. On what basis? The empiricist theory of meaning. The empiricist theory of meaning. Thanks to Russell and some continental equivalents, Wittgenstein, you see, and the tradition of Mill and David Hume, the elimination of metaphysics. The anti-metaphysical strain of 19th century empiricism recurring in 20th century positivism. Okay, does that much come through clearly? Okay, picture theory of meaning. All right, run through the second half with me. Signs and symbols. Now, maybe you've been accustomed to using the two interchangeably. He doesn't. And many semanticists do not. A word is a sign. Okay, a word is a sign. One and the same sign can be common to two different symbols. Yes, you see, a word can symbolize, the word can be used to symbolize different things. The word green, that sound, could be used to symbolize Bill Green, and I didn't make up the name Bill Green, there happens to be a Bill Green I know. You see. It can symbolize V Green, it can be used to symbolize that state of affairs called envy, and of course it can be used to symbolize colour. So one and the same sign can be common to various different symbols. In this way, the most fundamental confusions are easily produced, and philosophy, he says in parenthesis, is full of them. Yeah. When we get a little bit further, we'll be coming to the mind-body problem. And his book on the concept of mind, in which he suggests that it's simply by means of misunderstanding about the logic of language that the word mind has come to be used to refer to an entity, an immaterial part of a human being. Whereas the logic of language properly understood is such that mind refers simply to certain brain functions. So in this way, then, confusions are easily produced. Now, to avoid such errors, we mustn't use the same sign for different symbols. That's obvious. What we need is a sign language that is governed by logical syntax. Russell's ideal language, yes. What we need to do philosophy with precision is symbolic logic. You see, and it was this sort of thing which stirred the symbolic logic industry, as it has become. And then 403, most